Hello everyone, I'm back at it again in my little yellow kayak. I just launched and the first thing I'm going to do is adjust the settings on this little portable fish finder here. It's an Eagle Cuda 168. It's pretty ancient at this point, but the way it works is I have it set up to shoot right through the plastic hull of my kayak. So that gray silly putty looking stuff is actually called duck seal. And that is available in most plumbing stores or any big box kind of hardware store. And it'll probably be in the plumbing section covered in dust near the bottom. And they come in bricks, moldable gray bricks of putty. And what I do is I make a little well in the bottom of the kayak. I pour a couple tablespoons of water in there, and you can use pond water, or if you have a water bottle you brought with you, you just put a splash in there. You squish the transducer into the kind of well you made, the little pocket you made, and then I kind of mash the putty on top of the transducer just to keep it in place. And there you go. It shoots right through the hull. You just need a drop of water in there to make sure the sonar is be able to reflect and receive signals. And that's all it takes. Alright, we're going to fast forward this part, mostly just because the paddling goes a lot faster in fast forward mode. But where I live in New England, I kind of have the choice. If it's warm out, especially if there's a string of warm days together, I can drive south and fish open water. And that's what I've done on this day. It's about mid-50s. It actually feels pretty nice. And on a series of cold days, I can drive north and fish ice. And that's actually what I did the next day. I was fishing open water this day, and the next day it was a little cooler. I drove north and fished part of the Winnie Derby. So first thing I'm going to do here is get out of the wind, just mostly because it's easier to paddle, easier to fish. But while I'm going along, I'm looking at that fish finder. I'm trying to stay in depths less than about 30 feet because I don't really want to target fish deeper than 30 feet. That's because they don't release all that well. So I'm kind of limiting myself to 30 feet or less. And I'm going to seek out pockets of this lake that might have a little bit warmer water. There's also a bunch of people out fishing because it's nice today. It's really nice for February. And so there's a lot of people fishing from shore. There's some people in waders. And I'm trying to give them plenty of space, stay out of their way. I'm in a boat. I'm the only boat out here, and I can fish really anywhere. So I'm just trying to give everybody plenty of space to fish and do what they want to do, stay out of their way, and hopefully find a couple fish. So when I run over some fish, right away what I do is I start backpedaling, see if I can land on them again, and I might even do some circles. Like I said, this is an ancient fish finder, but it does work. It runs off of 8 AA batteries, and it's super convenient because I can take it on and off the boat without too much trouble. The duck seal is probably the easiest method of setting up a transducer. Right now I'm doing little circles trying to get on those fish I saw, and eventually I just gave up because either they moved or it was a false signal. It was like a stick or a weed or something, and I couldn't reconfirm that it was a fish, so I'm continuing on my way. Anyway, that portable fish finder is helpful this time of year. And most of the summer and spring and even fall, I really don't use it, and it's just easier for me to fish without it. I'm generally fishing for more active fish, but this is February, and these fish are not active at all. They are just about as inactive as you can find fish. And so I'll be honest with you, I was struggling for a good part of the day. But my initial game plan was to paddle down where a river was coming into this lake. And sometimes on a warm day, that river water will be a little bit warmer than the lake water, and fish will push up towards that warmer water. I tried like heck to get something going in this corner here where there's a little bit of warmer water coming in, and I couldn't get anything going. But what I noticed, and I could see it on the fish finder too, is that either the river was something about the flow was disturbing the bottom and introducing bubbles, or the river was bringing leaves into the lake and then they were decomposing, and it's CO2 bubbles I was seeing, or like sulfur bubbles or something like that. I didn't smell anything that made me think something was rotting down there, but all in this corner, all I could see was bubbles. And from far away, it kind of looked like herring splashing around. I got all excited for a second. But no, I spent way too long probably fishing in and around bubbles, marking what looked kind of like fish, except the fish would rise up towards the boat, which is very unusual. And yeah, I was marking bubbles. That's what I was marking. But I just didn't expect. You can kind of pick them out on the surface of the water when it's calm. It looks like fish rising, basically, but they weren't fish. They were just bubbles bubbling up. Yeah, man, I really don't understand what that phenomenon was all about, but they were definitely bubbles and not fish. So I spent way too long in here, and then eventually I had to. Oh, there was one on the right. Eventually I had to abandon the bubble fish and go try to find some real fish. By the way, if anybody's interested in that portable fish finder, they still pop up now and then on online auction sites like eBay. I bet if you searched around the web, you could probably find them. The one I like specifically is the portable version that runs off of the 8 AA's. And then I got rechargeable batteries, so I'm not burning through the AA's. There's also a color version, which is a little bit nicer, but that goes through the batteries a little bit faster. So if they're rechargeable batteries and maybe it doesn't make a difference to you, you go with the color one. For me, I like just the kind of plain old grayscale version because the batteries last so much longer than the color version. So I've tried a bunch of different lures by now, and what I'm doing is I'm fishing a Castmaster, and I've marked the fish on my ancient fish finder, and I'm trying to get him to come up and hit the Castmaster. I've got a I think it's called metallic perch, 1/8 ounce Castmaster tipped with a piece of worm, and I'm trying to get the fish on the bottom to come up to me and eat that Castmaster. It's a lot like ice fishing. I've got basically an ice fishing lure, and I'm just trying to get those fish to cooperate, but they're pretty inactive and they're pretty cold and they don't really want to cooperate. But I finally got one in the boat. That's a little smallmouth. I don't know if you noticed, but he hit it once. I missed him, and then he came back for it. I got him again. What was interesting was that he was coughing up all kinds of stuff on his way up. I think maybe partly digested herring, maybe some crawfish parts too. So he seemed to be eating pretty well down there. But since it's so cold, they really don't need to eat very much. Their metabolism slows way down. So it's hard to get them to eat, especially if they're well fed this time of year. The water's pretty cold, and I got bright skies. These are not the perfect conditions, but I'm trying to make the most of it. I was trying to find some more smallmouth, but either they were too well fed or just not hungry, and I just kept moving around marking fish, and every once in a while I'd get another one, but these were all little perch. Maybe medium-sized perch, but definitely on the smaller end. But you know what? It's February. I'm fishing open water. This is pretty nice. It's 55 degrees. And I'm floating around on a lake again. Look at that little guy. Smallmouth will eat those too. Goes right back down. Quick release. So that was basically the game plan, was to cruise around and see what I could find on the fish finder and then fish vertically above them. And yeah, I was just picking away at them. Nothing too crazy. The other spot that I wanted to fish was where the spillway was dumping into the lake. It's probably not as warm as the river water. It's probably about the same temperature as this water, but it will have more oxygen and maybe some bait getting washed down. I couldn't fish here earlier because there was some people fishing around the dam, and I didn't want to get in their way. Plus, I thought the river water might be warmer in that little corner. And then I ran into bubblefish. Anyway, I'm back to fish the spillway area. But it's the same kind of plan. I'm looking for fish on the sonar, on the fish finder. I'm looking for marks on the fish finder, and then I'll drop down to them. If you have an idea that fish are going to be in a spot like this, which is usually a pretty good bet, you can use the fish finder just to fish a certain depth. Say you want to, start in 20 feet and then let the spillway water push you back out to 30 and then go up again. I was doing a little bit of that too. So the fish finder helps with that kind of stuff too. So I'm down to the Castmaster again. I tried a bunch of other lures, but the fish just really weren't into it. I tried a blade bait. I tried some little microplastics. I tried a bunch of stuff, and the fish just weren't into it. So this is kind of like plan C. And I'm just trying to get a few more fish in the boat and declare victory for the day. All right, I marked some fish on the bottom, kind of shaking that Castmaster in the face, trying to get him to come up. Let's see what we got here. More giant perch, except they're not giant at all. They're kind of small. What are you going to do? If I hold him to the camera, he might look a little bigger. No, still not any bigger. But, yeah, that's what we're left with. Kind of the bottom of the barrel, but mid-February, I'm floating around in the kayak. It's 50 degrees, the sun's going down. It's pretty nice here, just floating around. So I'm trying to catch a few bonus fish before I have to head in and that sun goes down. And you know what? This is pretty nice after being cold and drilling holes in ice and dragging my sled over snowbanks and down snowy hills and all the rest of it. I like all of it, but it is kind of nice to break up the ice fishing during these warm spells. And yeah, so the game plan is just kind of looking at the fish finder, and if I see some fish on the fish finder, I slow down my jigging motion and give them a chance to eat it. And when I feel them, you feel like a little pop at the end of your line, and then I set the hook. With the camera, ice fishing, with the camera, I can watch them eat it and set the hook that way. With the fish finder, I don't rely on the fish finder to tell me when to set the hook. I always wait for me to feel them on the end of the rod. So I keep my finger on the rod, and I'm paying attention to the line. I've got yellow braid. It's 6-pound Berkeley X9. I think they call it flame green, but it's basically yellow. I watch the yellow line to see if it jumps, that kind of stuff. And I'm just kind of taking it easy, jigging up perch. There's another one. Sometimes when that sun is you can see it in the background there, when the sun is hitting the tops of the trees, everything starts to bite a little bit better. And sometimes I wonder if I just stayed in the same spot, if I stayed at the other end of the pond. Yeah, he's a little guy. If I stayed at the other end of the pond, maybe the fishing would have picked up and I would have been better off just staying put. But what I do is I just move around until I find fish. Sometimes I think that can be a mistake, but just I guess I'm not super patient sometimes when it comes to fishing, so I always move until I find fish. But then once I find them, I tend not to leave them unless I think I could do better somewhere else. And yeah, it's kind of a tough call. I'm not on the biggest fish or the best fish right now, but this is the best fishing that I've found, and I'm just going to stick with it. All right, I fished around a little bit more, but I really didn't find anything other than those small perch. And the light was getting lower and the bite seemed to slow down, so I started making my way towards the ramp. To be honest with you guys, I kind of debated whether to post this video or not because the fish production wasn't as great as I hoped it would be. But I threw in a little bit about the fish finder, and this is my first open water trip of the year, and sometimes, you know, every day can't be Christmas, as one of my fishing friends says to me. So I was happy to get out and float around and be warm and not have cold fingers. So this was a pretty good trip in my mind, and hopefully it will be onwards and upwards from here. On the way in, I met a young fisherman, and he was fishing in waders. He told me that he was fishing here all the time and he hadn't caught a fish in 3 months. He kind of reminded me of myself when I was younger. And I don't know if it's stubbornness or just grit or pig-headed determination, but I told him to keep trying, and he'll get them. So if he's out there, I hope you get some fish soon. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll list all the gear in the video description, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya!